Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on, well, a really fascinating journey. We're connecting the real cutting edge of digital finance, things like Bitcoin, blockchain, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations with organizational blueprints that are, surprisingly ancient.
Exactly. We're talking about trust, authority, governance, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. We're looking at historical figures, even early church leaders.
It's quite a mix. And it challenges this whole idea that these technologies are completely brand new, doesn't it?
It really does. We're drawing heavily from David Swisher's book, Early Warning, specifically Chapter 3. He digs into how technological disruption really shifts our fundamental relationship with trust.
Especially thinking about ministry structures, managing authority, that sort of thing.
Right. And our mission here, for you listening, is to cut through some of that heavy tech jargon.
Yeah, simplify it. We want to connect Bitcoin's launch back in 2008 to these, timeless questions.
Yeah.
Authentication, distributed authority.
And ultimately help you separate the real innovation from, well, let's face it, a lot of fear-based noise that surrounds crypto.
If there's one takeaway, what is it?
It's that blockchain, at its core, is about a new way to create trust, an engine of trust that, crucially, doesn't need a middleman.
Okay, let's unpack that engine then. It sort of kicks off in late October 2008, right? This email from Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, the pseudonym. Announcing a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and the idea itself was pretty radical.
Allowing payments directly between two people without needing a bank.
Exactly. Without the bureaucracy, the fees, or even needing permission from some financial institution.
But okay, how does that even work? How do you build trust online between strangers without a central bank stepping in?
Well, that's the brilliant part. How do you stop someone from, say, spending the same digital dollar twice or changing the transaction history?
Yeah, how do you prevent fraud?
That's where the structure comes in. It's designed to self-validate. Blockchain uses this public shared ledger. Everything's recorded, time-stamped, uses digital signatures. And then, to stop fraud, transactions get bundled together into blocks.
And these blocks are protected by that famous proof of work thing.
Precisely. To add a new block to the chain, computers have to solve these incredibly complex mathematical problems. It's called hashing.
And that takes serious computing power.
Massive amounts. Electricity, processing power. We call it proof of work. And the key insight, the real genius here, is that it's so computationally expensive that trying to cheat the system to defraud others, it becomes physically unaffordable. It's literally cheaper to play by the rules.
So the security isn't a vault. It's the sheer cost of trying to break in, a kind of computational barrier.
Exactly. It's this massive, transparent, computationally enforced barrier. The network's own self-interest keeps the ledger honest.
Wow, okay. And it wasn't just theory for long, was it? There was that moment, May 22, 2010.
Ah, the famous pizza moment.
The legend.
Right. This programmer in Florida pays 10,000 bitcoins for 2 Papa John's pizzas.
Which was worth, what, $40 then?
About $41, yeah. Now, well, depending on the day, maybe over $1 billion.
Yeah.
But that transaction, that was the proof.
It showed Bitcoin wasn't just some fringe coding experiment anymore.
It had real-world utility. It was a market good.
Okay, so that technology felt completely revolutionary. But the mock, Swisher's book, argues the principles behind it. They're actually centuries old.
Yeah, that's the mind-bending part. Where do we see these ancient precursors to digital finance?
Where?
Well, we can trace this decentralized, trust-based model back almost 1,000 years. Think about the Knights Templar during the Crusades, 12th, 13th centuries.
Okay.
Pilgrims going to the Holy Land couldn't exactly carry sacks of gold safely, right?
Too dangerous.
So instead, they deposit their funds at one Templar commandery, say, in France, and get a letter of credit.
Like a coded note?
Pretty much. And they could redeem that letter hundreds of miles away, in Jerusalem, perhaps, at another commandery.
Wow. That's basically a distributed banking network.
It is. It relied on this network of trusted hubs, not one single central authority. Kind of like early travelers' checks or safe deposit boxes.
Huh. Any other examples?
Yeah, there's the Hawala network. It's ancient, started in India, used widely across Islamic cultures for centuries. It's an informal transfer system.
Informal. How does that work?
It relies on a network of dealers. They're called hawaladars. They keep these coded journals, ledgers, but it's all based on trust and reputation within the network.
Okay, so you have the Templars, Hawala, and then Bitcoin. What's the core connection David Swisher is making here?
The key parallel Swisher draws is that these historical systems like Bitcoin are essentially permissionless and trust-based.
Meaning they operate outside of or alongside formal government or banking control.
Exactly. They bypass the need for that central regulating authority. Trust is built into the system itself or relies on community agreement about value and the integrity of the network.
Which ties back to that whole question of what gives currency value in the first place.
Right. Absolutely. And the book uses that great anecdote about trying to use US dollars in Peru.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
Well, the author points out, why does a dollar bill have value? Only because we agree it does. In parts of Peru, shopkeepers were apparently so wary of counterfeits that they'd often refuse any US dollar bill that looked even slightly worn or damaged.
Even if it was perfectly valid back in the States.
Didn't matter. If the local community wouldn't accept it, in that context, it had no utility, no value.
So value isn't intrinsic, it's about community acceptance and trust in the system of exchange.
Precisely. Currency is about utility and agreement.
Okay, this focus on decentralized trust, building networks across distance. This brings us to Swisher's really surprising featured innovator for decentralization.
Yeah, this one might catch you off guard.
The Apostle Paul.
The Apostle Paul. Swisher argues he was constantly wrestling with the exact same problems: trust, authentication, governance, managing funds across these widely dispersed networks of early Christians.
How so? What are the parallels?
Well, think about authentication first. How did Paul establish his legitimacy? It wasn't like he had a formal decree from a central office.
Right, there was no Vatican yet.
No. He used his personal testimony, his Damascus Road conversion story, and crucially, he sought and got the endorsement of key existing leaders like Peter and James in Jerusalem.
So he needed validation from the established nodes in the network, so to speak.
Kind of like getting consensus on a blockchain today, or having digital credentials verified within a distributed system. It authenticates you within the network.
Okay, that makes sense. What about managing money? Transparency.
He was incredibly meticulous about that, focused on accountability. Look at 2 Corinthians 8. Paul talks about the collection of funds for the Jerusalem church.
The collection for the poor there, right?
Exactly. But notice he didn't handle the money alone. He insisted that delegates appointed by the contributing churches travel with him and the funds.
To avoid any suspicion.
Precisely. It was a collective, visible, transparent approach. Everyone could see where the money was going. That's very much like what blockchain tracking offers today for donations visible, accountable tracking across a network.
But hang on, wasn't Paul's network much smaller, simpler than, say, a global organization today? Could that transparency scale?
The complexity was different, sure, but maybe immense in its own way. Different cultures, languages, distances. But the principle was simple. Transparency builds trust. And we see the modern value of that in the story Swisher tells about Pastor Juan Carlos.
The one using crypto for international donations.
Yeah. Some members were overseas facing terrible exchange rates or just didn't have easy access to international banking. Sending, say, $50 could cost $30 in wire fees.
Ouch. That basically makes small donations impossible.
Right. But using cryptocurrency, they could contribute easily, affordably. It bypassed those high fees, fostered a truly global participation by leveraging this decentralized low-cost system. It solved that dispersal and cost problem.
Okay, that naturally leads into the evolution of governance in these systems. DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, you mentioned them earlier.
Right. These are fascinating. They're essentially community-run organizations. The rules aren't in a handbook somewhere. They're built into the code itself.
Through something called smart contracts. Can you explain that quickly? What makes it autonomous?
Okay, yeah. A smart contract is like a digital vending machine. You put in the crypto, the input, the code automatically checks if the conditions are met, like you paid the right amount, and if so, it automatically executes the agreement, dispenses the digital snack, or transfers ownership, or releases funds.
So the rules are written in code on the blockchain.
Exactly. And once certain pre-agreed conditions are met, like, say, if Project X gets 51% of the votes from token holders, the contract automatically carries out the action.
Without needing a CEO or a committee to manually approve it.
Right, that's the autonomous part. The decision-making and execution are enforced by the code itself, transparently on the blockchain.
Got it. Now, David Swisher makes a pretty bold claim here in Early Warning. He says DAOs actually mirror the New Testament church governance model.
It's a striking comparison. If you think of a traditional corporation, like a top-down hierarchy, maybe a kingdom.
What's a DAO like?
It's more like a cooperative. Think digital neighborhood association where everyone who holds a token gets a vote on decisions. Swisher points to Acts 2, the early church sharing resources, making decisions together, and Jesus' teachings in Matthew 20 about servant leadership, not ruling over
So
others.
the structure itself pushes against power imbalances.
Ideally, yes. Compare that to how a big hierarchical company often reacts to a crisis, like a data breach.
It goes into lockdown, layers of management, PR teams controlling the message. It can be slow and opaque.
Right. But in a DAO, theoretically, because the rules are transparent and token holders have a stake, decisions can be made more quickly through coded consensus mechanisms. It forces a certain agility and transparency, principles Paul seemed to value.
Okay, we have to shift gears slightly. Because for many listeners, hearing digital currency, blockchain, it immediately triggers fear. Fear-based narratives are everywhere.
Absolutely critical to address those because they often stop people from even exploring the potential benefits or understanding what's really going on. Two big ones pop up constantly.
The cashless society panic.
That's one. The idea that governments are plotting to eliminate physical cash entirely, forcing everyone onto digital money.
What's the counter to that?
Well, it's largely a distraction, isn't it? As figures like Dave Ramsey often point out, something like 90+% of transactions in the US are already digital. We use cards, apps, online banking constantly.
The digital infrastructure is already here.
It's here now. Cryptocurrency adoption doesn't require getting rid of cash. Cash still serves important functions for many people, and serious analysts aren't predicting its imminent disappearance.
Okay, what's the second big fear? This one feels more politically charged.
It's the surveillance sphere. The idea that central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, or just a fully digital economy will lead to total government surveillance, the power to track everything, maybe even cancel people financially if they dissent.
What does Swisher say about that?
He basically calls them very tired arguments, and here's why. The infrastructure for that kind of tracking, sadly, largely exists already through our current digital banking and credit card systems.
Every swipe, every online purchase is already recorded somewhere.
It is. Your bank, credit card companies, payment processors, they already have vast amounts of transactional data. The idea that a CBDC is the only path to surveillance is often a misdirection.
So the capacity is already built.
To a large extent, yes. And
Okay.
Swisher adds a crucial point. Be very critical of groups pushing these specific conspiracy theories linking only digital currency to a future surveillance state. Often, he says, they're trying to sell us something.
Like gold or silver or some alternative asset.
Usually tangible assets, yeah. The advice is resist the fear-based appeals. Focus on understanding the actual technology, its pros and cons.
Okay, so education is key. That brings us to practical steps. If you're listening, especially if you're in ministry leadership, and you want to engage wisely, what does Swisher recommend? How do you start learning?
His main advice is pretty simple. Learn by doing. You need some hands-on experience to really sift fact from fiction, as he puts it.
Get your feet wet.
Exactly. He suggests starting with user-friendly platforms, ones that lower the barrier to entry for beginners.
He mentions Coinbase and Robinhood specifically.
Right. Coinbase is a huge, well-known platform for buying, selling, storing crypto. And for beginners, he really likes their Coinbase learning rewards.
How was that?
You watch short educational videos about different cryptocurrencies, answer a few questions, and they give you a small amount, like a few dollars worth of that crypto.
So you learned and get a tiny bit to experiment with, risk-free.
Exactly. It's a great way to just understand the basic mechanics.
And Robinhood.
Robinhood is known for its easy-to-use app. It offers trading in stocks, ETFs, and also crypto. A big plus there is fractional shares. You can invest small amounts, like $5 or $10, which is great for novices just wanting to explore how these markets intersect.
Okay, platforms for practical learning. What about understanding the theory, the basics?
For that foundational knowledge, Swisher strongly recommends one particular book for people who aren't tech or finance experts. It's called The Basics of Bitcoins and Blockchains, an introduction to cryptocurrencies and the technology that powers them.
By Anthony Lewis.
That's the one. It's published by Invite Press. Swisher relies on it heavily himself, says it gives the essential context without getting bogged down in jargon.
Great recommendation. So Coinbase, Robinhood for hands-on, and the Anthony Lewis book from Invite Press for the fundamentals.
That's a solid starting point.
Fantastic. So looking back at our deep dive today, it seems whether you're the Apostle Paul figuring out how to get funds safely to Jerusalem, or a modern church using Ethereum for global donations. The core challenge is similar, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. How do you build transparency? How do you build trust across distances, across networks, without concentrating all the power and authority in one single place?
And that leads us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Yeah, think about this. If the DAO model, as Swisher suggests, really does mirror the New Testament organizational ideal so closely with its collective decision-making, shared transparency, non-hierarchy, could it be that these organizational structures, born from technological change, might actually end up, well, forcing us to reconsider, maybe even reform, the traditional hierarchical church governance models that have been dominant for centuries?
Wow. That's a significant challenge to the status quo, something we'll definitely need to wrestle with.
Indeed.
Thank you for guiding us through this really thought-provoking chapter of Early Warning.
My pleasure.
Next time on the Deep Dive, we're continuing this exploration of tech and ministry. We'll be jumping into Chapter 4 of the book, looking at virtual presence, the metaverse, and what that means for ministry and leadership in increasingly digital spaces. Should be fascinating.